Excelsior and all that. Welcome back to Reblogatog, episode 2. So this is the second time I've done a synopsis of the previous week's Blogatog, which is the Tumblr account for Mark Rosewater, who's the head designer for Magic R&D. So I used to do this on Chatter the Squirrels. Check this out on Facebook Live. We do that here locally for the show, but we spun this off trying this on a YouTube and get that out there once a week. So we're going to start from back around Friday the 13th, because again, we're going from last week into this week, and then we'll come forward. So journey with me, if you will, while we take a look through some of the thought processes that he has, and some of the answers he gives, and just the kind of person he is sometimes too, because he is definitely a positive force on the interwebs. So the first one we're going with is, "Hi Mark, happy Friday the 13th. I wish to invoke the sacred right of birthday trivia. Can you tell us anything about my favorite card, Squirrel Nest? Thanks." Again, here at Grove Gamers Guild, where Squirrel is our mascot, we love squirrel stuff. If you're not familiar with birthday trivia, it's been a thing for years. If it's your birthday, you can ask him for a piece of trivia, and if he has it, he'll share it. So, after the popularity in tournaments of Deranged Hermit, the brand team expressed concern that squirrels weren't badass enough for Magic. It was a different time. So I promised we'd make out our squirrels more badass, which is how we got to the original art for Squirrel Nest. So, squirrels became badass. We're going to bookend this with some more squirrel talk, so stay tuned. We're going to follow through for more squirrels, because there's some surprises coming for some of you. Why are the threat of the Phyrexians and dying hope of the last marriage just brushed aside by the plot without any real resolution for over 10 years? So we have been waiting a long time for a resolution to this plot line. Now we've went through the Ravnica, we've had the War of the Spark, we've had other things happening, but it has been a while since we saw the Phyrexians. And I think we're getting close to there, and we're probably going to see those in the next year, hopefully. I don't think they're going to be on Ikoria. I hope they're not on Zendikar. Zendikar needs to heal, so maybe the next winter set? Anyway, he says we have a lot of plot lines, and it can take time for stories to play out. Elspeth was in the underworld for 7 years. I promise we have not forgotten about the Phyrexians. It's coming. We just as a group are impatient folks. I'm a big fan of not getting fetch lands for standard, but is shuffling a large issue still with many professional tournaments now moving to digital. And he lets us know once again, Magic isn't just about digital. The vast majority of sanctioned tournament play happens on tabletops, aka paper. Paper's not going anywhere, guys, and he just reiterates that over and over. I know right now we're in a trying time with the coronavirus, COVID-19, and that might be your outlet, but please don't forget your LGSs. I'm an LGS. Don't forget me. Take care of your LGSs if you love playing face-to-face, if you like card games, if you like board games, role-playing games. What your LGS is providing, you need to support them. This is a trying time for them. Here's somebody says, I'm intrigued by the satyrs in Theros, but haven't found what they're for. Can you explain what role, if any, they were designed to fill in Standard? This is Misbegotten Soul thinks that everything has to be, I don't know, for a reason that makes sense to them. They were designed because we thought people would enjoy playing them. Not everything is designed for Standard tournament play. Some people like satyrs. I'm also thinking maybe it's a tip-off we're going to get more satyrs later on so that we can have maybe a satyr tribal deck. That's a personal thought. A lot of times Wizards will put something in a set and then later on we'll call back to that. So if we got sort of a satyr tribal lord kind of thing, we get called back to it. We shall see though, right? Have you ever thought of creating more cards that say you can have any number of card name in your deck? Like Persistent Petitioners or Shadowborn Apostles. Red, white, and green, to my knowledge, have no cards with such effects. I play almost exclusively Commander, and I peruse Scryfall religiously. We'll make more, but we do them infrequently. I do think we'll see them eventually in all 5 colors. He said many times in the past that this is an ability that's restricted to black. Black got the first 3 or something, until blue got 1. We're going to get them in the other colors, just going to take a little time. So, again, as a general sort, us Magic players are very impatient. I forgot to ask for birthday trivia yesterday. I would love to learn something new about Darksteel Garrison. If you're unfamiliar with that, that's from Future Sight, and it was a fortification for land. So it's like an equipment for land. So Morrow says, when making future shifted cards for Future Sight, we tended to take existing mechanics and tweak them. Darksteel Garrison was us riffing off of equipment, doing something similar that equipment couldn't technically do. We've talked about putting fortifications in sets, but land aura effects are just so narrow. It's hard to find enough design to justify it. Happy birthday. We've got more on that in a little bit, because I do these in the order that they came up. That way we can follow some stories kind of as they develop. This is another one. Estrid has proven problematic for some franchise purposes. This is in response to a previous question that I didn't cover. Can you elaborate on that? Without elaboration, it sounds like you're saying men don't find bald women attractive, and therefore we can't use her in marketing. No, that's not what he's saying. Nothing like that. We're much more conscious these days of how well the character can be illustrated in other medium, and her power suite doesn't animate well. We'll get to the reason for that on the very next one. Could Estrid be tweaked to be more media friendly? She has numerous moving, floating masks. Human faces are especially tricky in animation. She was made to be a cool, static image, but no thought was made as to how it would animate. It's something we're more conscious about now. I'll be talking from time to time, as he does, about how Magic is designed differently for digital and paper, and usually one of them might get a little bit of a short stick once in a while because you lean one way or the other. But ultimately they want everything that works in paper to work digitally. So that does leave some things out of paper that maybe we would like. But there's also some things that digitally they can do that we're not going to see in paper. Random effects are the easiest to illustrate. Randomly put a creature from your deck onto the battlefield. Very hard to do in paper. Be very easy for the computer to do that. Hey Mero, how big is the design space for fortifications that grant lands extra effects when tapping for mana? Something like Wild Growth, but with different effects than adding extra mana. Not very big. It has to be something that's small and relevant at a time you would want mana. So, I believe this is our last fortification. Are fortifications hard to grok? Grok meaning to understand. Taken from, I believe, an old Robert Heinlein novel. I see them as simple variation on an evergreen mechanic. Am I underestimating the complexity? I'd like to see more, and now that artifacts can be colored. So Maro says, the problem is, why not just make them auras? How often does a land get destroyed? Because the fortification protected the land from being destroyed. And there's not of land destruction effects because ultimately they're not very fun. And that's why they don't make very many. There's a few because sometimes you need an answer for a land. But LD as a deck archetype, not fun. I'm not saying it should get it, but has there ever been serious discussion of giving blue enchantment removal? Like it needs it. From a flavor standpoint, countering a spell and undoing an enchantment feels similar and more fitting than in black, which I'm not against. Blue has other answers, but lack of permanent destruction is part of blue's weakness. They can still bounce them. There's lots of blue bounce. Blue still has answers. So, blue's okay, I believe. If or when, this is another thing he'll answer once in a while. If something's likely to happen, or when. So, auras with Enchant Planeswalker that give an additional loyalty ability. He believes that's a when, not an if. We did learn that Ikoria previews are going to start on April 2nd. He had misquoted it in his article. It's March 26th. It got corrected. So April 2nd, we start getting regular previews. We are going to go over some stuff here in a little bit, so stay tuned for that. Because he did give us some teasers, like we used to do in the old days. Must say, I was looking forward to Ikoria spoilers to distract me from how boring it is staying at home in isolation. And I'm really sad that they're postponed. New cards give me something cool to talk with my friends about, and I desperately need to stop talking epidemiology all the time. As we all do. Let's all find something different to talk about. This is going to be going on a while with the COVID-19 coronavirus thing. He goes, I feel your pain. I'll share a little story with you to whet your appetite for Ikoria. I returned from the Throne of Eldraine stream where I first announced the existence of Ikoria. And they talked about it being about monsters. If you didn't see that, go check it out. They had shot it down in Los Angeles. Dave Humphries, Ikoria's lead set designer, comes up to Mayro and says, so you announced Ikoria? Yeah. You said that the set had a cool mechanic that was a bit out there. It was something that players would enjoy, but be a bit surprised we actually made. We all assume this is Mutate, which we've come to learn is the name of a mechanic coming out in Ikoria. And we all assume it's going to be the Mutate mechanic. Mayro said, yeah. Which mechanic were you talking about? Is what Dave Humphries told him. You see, there are two mechanics in the set that fit that description. So now we're left wondering, what's that other mechanic that's so kind of out there? Very interesting, and we love to speculate as Magic players. I got lots to speculate on, and I do try to do this video in a timely manner. So hit up some comments if you have speculation on what the other mechanic is they're talking about. Hey, Mark, I'm working at home as well. WotC is working at home because they've closed their offices and they're doing their social distancing thing and they're working from home. Said, so wonder what's the biggest difference between working at office to working at home for you? And Mayro says the lack of incidental interaction. I basically talk with my coworkers over video chat and meetings, but there's little talk on the side, which is both fun and useful. On the upside, I have more to myself time, which means I have more time to design cards. And he loves to design cards. But I can see where he's getting at. The talk on the side, yeah, you have a meeting and you talk specifically, but there's a lot of, as I understand it, in the bullpen, basically, if we're going to use a comic book term, in the bullpen of WotC, where they're working in cubicles and they just like, hey, what do you think about? Or, I got this idea. Or, hey, let's play this new mechanic real quick. I made up a few cards. So there's not as much of that. And he's going to do some articles in the future about the set they're designing right now, letting us know how this affected the design of the set that we'll see in 2 years. Regarding legendary sorceries, so then does this mean, and they weren't popular, does this mean the ship has sailed on the card type, more or less? Because they've done studies, they send out questionnaires and stuff all the time. Maybe you filled one out. Does it mean the ship has sailed? I could imagine us using it for a super flavorful card in a supplemental product. Maybe, but mostly I don't expect to be using it a lot for now. Perhaps the future, there's enough time elapsed, we could try a slightly different version if we find a cool one. Kind of like they did with Chroma into Devotion. Chroma didn't work out, didn't play well. They came back, tweaked it, made the gods with Devotion. It's a home run. So possibly legendary sorceries could get there at some point. Hi, Mark. Hope you're still doing well. Why did you or someone else on design team decide that sagas should happen on the draw step? Isn't the upkeep specifically there to host those sorts of triggers? I gotta admit, after playing for 25 plus years, that sagas are a little weird being on after the draw, not during the upkeep. So I'm on board with the question. He says they work better if you could see what you draw first. If we had Magic to start over, and I've heard him say this before, but it might be your first time hearing it, I think the upkeep step, or more specifically the effects we do at upkeep, would happen after the draw step, or maybe at the start of the main phase. And if you've taught anyone to play Magic, you know this to be very true. It is very hard to teach a player about the upkeep step. You basically have to build decks specifically to make them stop, because first off, new players want to draw a card, and then they want to untap. So training them to untap, draw, but building that upkeep in there can be very difficult on a new player. A lot of beginner decks don't have upkeep triggers. So I could definitely see this being a thing. When the set you guys are working on right now comes out, will you touch on how COVID-19 impacted the design process? Spoiler alert, I already told you, yeah, he's going to do that. So there we are on that. All right, so this is a pretty long one. I may be unfair to complain, but people still complain to him. Coming from a time where we wouldn't know what cards we would open on a booster when the set was released. Even so, I got to be vocal about having a spoiler season promised us at a very late date and then having it postponed again. I don't see how giving info on the set, having an extra mechanic, is any helpful. So please, when the full set from a shop in Spain, like they always do, don't come public to complain on how you hate leaks. Sorry, I have to be vocal. So as he does so often and with such style, Mayro explains to this individual what's going on. I honestly feel your pain. This whole pandemic is stress-inducing, and that's from someone living at Ground Zero, King County, here in the U.S. I'm sorry I wrote down the wrong date, and it got printed in my article. We corrected it in just a few hours, but I get that news travels fast. Had this been business as normal this last week and not a chaotic transition to work at home, I'm pretty confident the mistake would have been caught and fixed. Preview seasons take a long time to put together, and there's a huge amount of coordination as there's tons of moving pieces. If you guys know, nowadays they sculpt the way we see a set. They hand it out to different content creators. Different cards get previewed on the side. They show us the mechanics. There's a certain order, and when we get an actual spoiler, not a preview, it really ruins all the work they put into it. But he says it's just not something that's easy to move. In fact, it's a pretty monumental task in normal times, and this is far from that. I get a lot of messages from the public. I truly sense that everyone is eager for things to take their minds off the scariness that is today's news. And we're doing our best to help with that. But people wanting something quicker doesn't magically make it any easier on our end to make it quicker. Like everyone, we're doing the best we can to adapt to a pretty fast-moving reality. I promise you, we've put together an awesome set, and it won't be that long before you can all start talking all about it. And when that day comes, I promise, I have tons to share with you all. Thanks. Such class in his response. So, we'll get there, guys. April 2nd will be here before we know it. Hopefully with the 2-week shutdown, 2 to 3 week shutdown, hopefully we can open back up and regain some amount of normalcy. Time's going to tell on that. The bigger question I have regarding Ikoria, and one you are probably not yet prepared to answer, I think we can safely assume that it will not be recommended to be gathering in groups yet come pre-release time. What does it do to a set if it has no in-person pre-release? Are you considering alternatives at this time? And I'll go ahead and read his answer, but I'll expand. We're for the first time ever allowing stores to sell players pre-release kits for them to play at home. This is something WotC told us a week, 10 days ago. It's been a while, several days. For the first time, I as an LGS will be able to sell you a kit that you can just take home and play, or if you want to gather with a small group of friends or your family and play, you can take it home and play. And I'll provide curbside pickup as long as I'm still open, like many stores across the country will do. That's a month out, so let's hope that we're in a better place then. If not, maybe you can play in a small event at an LGS. But this is something that WotC has already covered. It's coming. We can sell it. It's not going to count against us if we have a small release, because that's how they use to forecast future releases, how many cards they need. So it's already being taken care of. WotC is thinking ahead on this. And I, for one, very thankful. Just out of curiosity, since black gets card draw in exchange for life, and white can gain life, could divination be printed as a gold card for like a black, a white, and one generic? My gut says no, but maybe you could help me find out why. So his response is, just because the component pieces are all in flavor doesn't mean the combination is. For example, and I've seen this example several times, green can do flash, green has death touch, and it has enter the battlefield fight. At least for now, because they're looking into that. Too strong. But if you put them all together, you could get a murder, which green can't do. I mean, you could take like a, for 2, 3, 4 mana or whatever, flash in a creature with death touch to block a creature, or just to fight a creature, and it's like a murder. So just because a color can do all the component pieces doesn't mean you can combine them together, even in multicolor, and get a new ability. So here's another one. Why is it okay for green to build its own murder by combining a flash plus death touch creature? I'll talk right in a minute, I promise. By combining a flash plus... I'm going to start over. Why is it okay for green to build its own murder by combining a flash plus death touch creature with an instant speed fight spell, but not okay to have a flash plus death touch plus ETB fight creature? Well, this is a little different because there's a big difference in utility between one card doing all those things and 2 cards doing something in combination. So we just talked about they couldn't have them all together, but if you take 2 cards, that changes things. You have to draw 2 different cards. Now you've got a combo. And we know combos are a little tougher to pull off. So, kind of towards the end here, but this is a biggie. And we just went over this also on our Chatter of the Squirrels with the local community, because I wanted to get one Blogatog thing, because this is, as I alluded to earlier, in the old days, and I don't remember the last set they did this for. They were doing it when I opened the shop 10 years ago. In the old Duelist, and sometimes in his articles online, Mayro would come up with cryptic descriptions of cards that were coming out in future sets. Somewhere along the line, they quit doing that, because they went to these preview seasons. And they were a lot of fun, trying to guess what a mechanic was going to be, trying to guess what the creature was going to be. And the same example I used earlier is really easy from like Mirage, Phyrexian... I already forgot the name of the card. That's horrible, isn't it? That's that old-timer stuff I've got. Anyway, the spoiler was a 1-mana 12/12 creature. 12 power, 12 toughness. Little did we know that when we got the card, obviously you're not just dropping that on turn 1 and swinging with the 12/12. There's a little bit of setup to get that guy going. So anyway, this is more stuff along the same line. And I thought some of them were really, really neat. So until we get to April 2nd, here's some teasers like they used to give. So, Magic's 7th Egg, a card with the text 4 or more times this game. So that's a bit of a tracking issue, but there's some other tracking issues we're getting to. A card that has the text total power 10 or less. 10 or less. That's... You'd think that'd be easy to get to, right? But we are doing monsters and mutate. I don't know. Magic's largest power toughness granting aura, which I believe we already have a 10-10. Eldrazi Conscription, I believe, is a 10 plus 10 plus 10. So that's a big aura. That's going to make a big creature. But how big it is, we don't know. Bigger than a 10-10, though, I believe. A card with the text X is the number of times this creature has mutated. So we already knew that mutate was a mechanic we were getting. It was spoiled in unsanctioned, the unset, you know. So we know that. But X is the number of times this creature has mutated. So creatures can mutate more than once, apparently. Magic's third and fourth card with 0 is even reminder text. I know Void Winnower is one, and I'm still forgetting the other one. But this is the third and fourth instances. So 2 in one set that tell you 0 is even. That interests me. 3 cards with the text different names. So we're going to be looking for stuff with different names. Something like the old card Intuition makes you look for 3 cards with different names. He errated this later because he missed loyalty counters. So a total of 13 different types of counters. So besides loyalty counters, 12 other types of counters in one set. This is the complexity level. That's a lot of different kinds of counters to track. So it's going to be interesting. I'm guessing maybe there'll be, like we had in Amonkhet with the little punch-out cards, some different counters to help track those. That's what makes the most sense to me. Is that we had the brick counters and the -1/-1 stuff. They had some punch-out counters to help us track all these. So that's my thought. We're going to have a way to track them, and that's probably the best way they can do it. But 12 different kinds of counters. Wow. A card that says, choose a kind of counter at random. Well, if you got 13 different kinds, that's not an easy task, but you probably don't have all 13 kinds on the field at once. So, using dice or some randomizing method. A card with the text, remove 8 foreshadow counters. So, we know one of the counters we're getting is foreshadow. I'm sure not all 12 of them are brand new, but foreshadow counters. What could that possibly mean? And a cycle that players have been asking us to make for over 10 years. So cycles are generally something that appear in each color. Is generally what they are. So you might have a blue, one of each color, and they all share some ability. Or some casting cost even. Power toughness. Some tribe. Sometimes you get vertical cycles through the rarities, a mythic, a rare, an uncommon, a common. The cycles usually just connect in some way that makes sense. Sometimes you get artifacts. There'll be a cycle of 3 that all do something, like the stations from Mirrodin block. So, and you get land cycles as well. I'm, for one, hoping that the cycle is lands. We're kind of missing a really good dual land cycle when things rotate this fall. So maybe putting a cycle of 10 dual lands that we've been wanting. And I'm not sure. There's a lot of them out there floating around. Or maybe they're completing a cycle by doing 5 enemy duels that we have the friends for. And there's several of those that are incomplete. So I'm not sure what those are, but I'm looking forward to it. In addition, Ikoria has some really cool creature types. Listen up, folks. We've got dinosaur turtles. We got shark beast, which means sharks are back. We got demon krakens. Demon krakens. If you think that sounds fun, the next one's even funner. Elemental otter. Because otter ain't good enough. We need an elemental otter. Brushwag's back. Yeah, look it up. Brushwag. Hellion Horror? Say that once is Hellion Horror. That's a lot of. And the last thing on his list that gives us a little taste, and so excited for this. Told you earlier we here at the Guild love squirrels. At least I do. It's my mascot. It's on my business card. It's on the sign out front. We're getting Nightmare Squirrels. We're there. Finally, if you haven't been following along or you don't know, squirrels have been missing for Standard for almost 2 decades. It's been a long time. We got one in Modern Horizons last year for Modern, but these things have been gone from Black Border. There were people that thought they were too funny for Standard, and Mayro's been working for us squirrel lovers for a long time, and we're getting a Nightmare Squirrel, and we are souped up. I want to place that. I'm going to jam that. Better be something good. But we got squirrels coming back, and I'm excited. Nightmare Squirrel sounds like it's going to be Golgari. Sounds like it'll be black-green. Wouldn't mind if it was legendary to give me a black-bordered commander. But if it's not, that's okay. So, squirrels back in Standard. When you settle down, you can listen to the rest. We're close to the end. Squirrels back in Standard. That's the exciting thing. So, he did say that all of those odd creature types, they're real. They're not changelings. They're real. So we're getting a bunch of new creature types. So the Simic Combine has really been at work, I'm guessing. All right, your Ikoria teaser has me literally vibrating with excitement. That's maybe more information than we needed, but I do have one negative feeling, though. If the creature type teasers are because of changelings, I will be very upset. Spoiler alert, I already told you, not changelings. They're actual creature types. And guys, we're at the end, so hopefully you've enjoyed this episode, but we're going to end it the way we started it. Standard Legal Squirrel. Woo! Congratulations to you and to everyone who's been waiting for this since I have to ask a question, because he likes questions. How'd you do it? How'd you keep quiet on this? And he just says it's a group effort, and that he's learned to keep quiet. And another one that I didn't copy down, he says that the squirrel, pro squirrel people have been increasing over the last few years. Finally got them in there. I hope to see them where they make sense. Wouldn't mind some on Zendikar this fall. Zendikar's an adventure world. They got trees there. They should have squirrels on Zendikar. Anyway, we're ending with squirrels. We started with squirrels. Thank you guys for tuning in to Reblogatog. I appreciate it. If you got any comments, things you'd like me to do different, if you want me to look for certain types of questions, if you got any comments, I asked a couple questions while we were talking. Put them in the comments. Drop me a comment. Like the page, subscribe. Let me know. And I appreciate you guys tuning in. And we'll see you next week for another episode of Reblogatog.